It is possible, and I've got these hope stealers out here telling people they can't do it. And if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. People that are your inner circle, who do you hang with? People like us, you're stuck. The stuff we're teaching will not make you a billionaire. It won't do it. These people don't have private jets. They don't have a Lamborghini. We're creating generations now, even up into my old generation, of people who have the attention span of a gnat, and they can't stick with anything.
If you could make one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
Be generous.
What is it that you think we're missing out on at school? What are the key principles, as you were mentioning, that you need to learn at school or that you need to learn to start so that you can have a healthy relationship with your finances and money?
Well, there's a level of mythology that has been spread about money in our culture that was spread with an agenda, frankly. It was all, if I was a bank, I would teach everyone that they needed a credit score. And the reason I would teach them they need a credit score, and the way to get a credit score is to borrow money from me and pay it back to me so that you can raise your score, so you can borrow money from me, so you can pay it back to me, so you can raise your score, so you can borrow money from me, so you can pay it back to me, so you can raise your score. It's a great plan if you're a bank. And but then it was put out there that now the FICO score is like biblical truth or something. And it's not. It's a banking program to get people to borrow money. But now, and so what's happened with some financial literacy programs in schools is they're going to teach you to build your FICO score, because that's been accepted now as norm rather than actual fact. Well, it's accepted as fact, even though it's not a fact. And so what we've done is what we have. Our antidote would be to say, okay, we're going to teach people to live on a budget and how to do a budget. We're going to teach them to live on less than they make, a concept Congress can't grasp. We're going to teach them to be generous, outlandishly generous. And we're going to teach them to save and invest in the power of compound interest. And these things are agnostic to the banking community. And so we don't have to infiltrate the lending community and the people, the pieces of the financial industry that have an agenda into this curriculum. But basically, a lot of teachers have been indoctrinated by the culture that this is the way you have to live. You're always going to have a car payment. You have to have a credit card. You can't be a student without a student loan. And then they bring that into the classroom because they personally have been taught this. But when you back it out and say, well, the teaching is with an agenda, then you have to stop and go, well, there's a villain in this story. And so instead, we need to be teaching the basic premise of common sense. And the good news is we've actually gotten our high school curriculum in about 48% of the high schools in America so far. So we're waking up a few people here and there. We're causing a bit of a ruckus, but certainly the banks and those kinds of folks are not happy about that because we're teaching people not to borrow money.
What's the craziest financial situation that you've ever heard on the show? Like what's something that really blows your mind and you go, even this is crazy for Dave Ramsey?
The line that we always use, and it's true, is I haven't borrowed money in 30 years, so I don't have a credit score. Mine's undeterminable or zero. And so the joke is, and it's the truth, if I go down to a local apartment complex and there's a sweet little 26-year-old apartment manager that is corporate has told her what to do and they require a FICO score to rent, I can't rent an apartment there. Now, I'm a multimillionaire. I can write a check and buy the complex, but I can't rent an apartment there. Now, that's just asinine. That's just ridiculous. And so that illustrates the absurdity of this. As far as the crazy stuff on the show, oh my goodness. I mean, we do 3 hours a day for 30 years now. I mean, we've had crazy on parade at times. And the thing I have to try to do is laugh because I've done so many stupid things. I've got a PhD in DUMB. So when somebody calls with something stupid, we just laugh together. I mean, I'm not shaming them, but oh my gosh. I mean, people with I had a guy with $1 million in credit card debt one time. How do you do that? I mean, that was like a full-time job to pull that off. And we've had lots of people with hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt. And they just get themselves in all kinds of stuff. And so, you get stupid on steroids and it just explodes. It gets exponential. And it's really, it's crazy humorous because it's so absurd, but also while you're talking to them, it's just sad because they're completely trapped. And how am I going to get this this young dentist that's in one of our documentaries that's got $1 million in student loan debt, and how am I going to help him get out of that? Oh, it's just heartbreaking.
With this book, your first chapter is called "Can Anyone Be a Millionaire?" And I think a lot of people grow up with the feeling that they will never be one. They're not planning for that, and they don't even think about that. I would say that I grew up with that mindset too, because of the family that I was raised in and the people I was raised around. Tell us a bit about that question and why you take the approach you do to that, answering that question.
Well, it's an important place to start because it's one of the reasons we wrote the book. We've got a group of people in America, I call them hope stealers, who are saying that it's impossible to win now. It's impossible to win. There's too many systemic problems. There's too many things that are broken in the culture and in the economy that it's the ultimate line, the little man can't get ahead thing. And yet I kept running into millionaires everywhere who were first generation. They started with nothing. They did not inherit their money. And then I started running into them that had followed our baby steps. That's why we named it Baby Steps Millionaires, that became millionaires. And so I thought, I've got all this data and anecdotal evidence, both on one side that it is possible, and then I've got these hope stealers out here telling people they can't do it and stealing their hope. And so I thought, well, the first thing we got to do is we have to fix that, because it's the old Henry Ford line, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And so, you have to, if I think I can be in the NBA, I'm wrong. I can't, okay? There's not a chance. I don't have the physical skills. I'm an old guy with a pot belly. It's not happening, right? So that's ridiculous. But when it comes to over time, can I have a successful marriage, even though maybe in your past there's not one in your family tree? Over time, can I raise good kids? Even though in most of your family tree, no one turns out. Can you break that chain? And if you don't believe you can, you won't take the steps to do the hard work to be successful in that area, that compartment, that department of your life. And money's no exception to that. And money's particularly weird in the spiritual, in that, in this area of belief, because it will run from you. You can't catch it, if you don't believe, because you won't do the sacrificial things. You won't live like no one else, so that later you can live and give like no one else. There's no reason a farmer would ever go out and toil in the sun and plow the field and get the stumps out and the rocks out and then put corn in the ground if he didn't think corn was going to come up after he did that. That would be absurd. Only a crazy person would do something that they don't think is going to turn out. And so you have to believe first. And so what we try to do is we try to bring in emotional behavior, data of other people, and math, and any kind of a lens I can get you to look through to make you believe that you can do it. I know you can do it, but I've got to convince you you can do it before we can move into the tactical steps.
What would you say are the mindsets or the traps that keep people broke, where you are having to convince people that they can? What are those things that keep us in that mindset?
I think we become, number one, who we hang around with. There's no question about that. So you have to be careful. And I'm not talking about being snobbish to someone. I'm nice to anybody. I'll talk to anybody about anything. I'm happy. But I'm talking about your crew, the people that are your inner circle. Who do you hang with? Your income is going to approximate theirs over time. Your physical condition, if they're all overweight, you're going to be overweight. If they take care of their bodies, you're going to take care of your body. If they have good marriages, you're going to have good marriage. You're going to become who you hang around with. You're even going to have an accent like they do, and you're going to read the books that they read. And so, number one, you need to get yourself in a community of people who are achievers, who believe it can be done, who understand it's tough, and I'll encourage you when you're having a hard one. Because some of us have had a hard couple of years here. A lot of us have, And so you got to have guys and gals in your corner that say, "Go, champ! You got this. You can do it. I got your back, man." And so that's so much different than growing up in a neighborhood where my parents were saying, "You can do this," but a lot of the kids I ran around with, their parents were saying, "Well, the little man can't get ahead. You're always going to have a car payment. You're stuck. People like us, people that have a Southern accent, they're hillbillies and rednecks. We don't get ahead. We just give the middle finger salute to the man and we move on. And you can do that from any racial background, any cultural background. There's a group of people that declare themselves stuck. Then there's also a group of people within that same community, in that same tribe, it's a smaller group, that declare that it's possible to be free. It's possible to prosper. It's possible. And it's victims or victors. And the neat thing is that once you begin to kind of get that inside of you, anyone can just make that choice. I decide.
What are some of those key steps? If someone's in their 20s right now or in their 30s and they're like, I want to be a baby steps millionaire. I don't want to walk through the 7 steps because I know they're beautifully laid out in the book. What are some of the first things that they need to start thinking about, Dave?
Let's go back to it and say out loud, the tech person or whatever, the stuff we're teaching will not make you a billionaire. It won't do it. Mathematically, it won't. These were millionaires, $1 to $10 million worth of net worth. Okay. And so that's a lot of money, but it's not a billion. These people don't have private jets. They don't have 6 houses. They don't have a Lamborghini. Those are billionaires that have that. And a lot of those are people that are household names, the Gates or the Buffetts or the whatever, that kind of thing. But that's a different world. In this world, the way to get the first 1 to 10 million ends up being 80% of them, a little about 83% of them, had 2 things that showed up almost every time. Number 1, they funded their 401k in good mutual funds and their Roth IRAs in good mutual funds over an extended period of time, 12 to 17 years. That's not that long, but that was long. It's longer than 5 minutes. And it's not get rich quick. It's the tortoise, not the hare. So 12 to 17 years. During that time, the average millionaire paid off their home in 10.2 years. And so what we've got a guy or a gal that's got $1.5 million net worth, and in there is a $500,000 paid for home and $1 million in their retirement accounts. And that's almost all. It was those 2 things. The power of compound interest, building up your mutual funds, winning in your 401k, and just steady, never stopping, never panicking when the market's down, just steady. Just keep doing it. It's boring. It's not sexy at all. You're not going to be on the cover of Fast Company magazine, paying off your mortgage. Nobody knows you did it. It's just kind of, but here you sitting with a paid for house and $1 million, I think you're going to be okay. So that's what most of them did. A few of them were farm millionaires, large enough to be to mention here, meaning that they not inherited, but they were a farmer that bought land, and then they bought more land, and then they bought more land, and that land in and of itself became worth over $1 million. That wasn't that unusual. We saw several of those as well. But what we discovered was process people are the ones that did this, whether they were baby steps millionaires or just millionaires. And so the number 1 career was engineer. Number 2 was accountant. Number 3 was teacher. Number 4 was an executive. And number 5 was a lawyer. MDs didn't even make the top 5. Medical doctors made number 6. And if you count even the MDs, if you count every one of those, okay, engineer, accountant, teacher, executive, and lawyer. Every one of those are systems people. They believe in a set of principles, and when you follow those principles, you get a result. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. If you plant corn, don't be shocked corn comes up. In every one of those, it's a cause and effect world that they live in. They believe in systems. They believe in processes. Figure out the system, work the system. You build a bridge this way, it stays up. You do a lesson plan this way, the student learns. Every one of, you follow a set of decorum and laws and processes in court, or the judge puts you in jail for contempt. You have to. And so all of these are process people. So it turns out it's a process.
You spoke about something really brilliant. It's not sexy. It's not quick. And it's not what it looks like on Instagram, on social media, in the pictures. I feel like half the battle is building that discipline muscle, that habit, that pattern of consistent focus. What is taking us away from that? How do we build that muscle? Because it sounds like to me that that's what's blocking us. We want it to be sexy. We want it to be fast. We want it to look a certain way. And you're like, wait. It doesn't look like that at all.
You know, I think it's disturbing. The wonderful things about social media are obvious. The wonderful things about the internet are obvious. We're able to do this interview this way. It's obvious that it's a fabulous convenience and everything. The downside is that we're creating generations now, even up into my old generation, of people who have the attention span of a gnat. I mean, they can't stick with anything. And in order to do something of greatness, it requires a steady application over a period of time. The old days of a craftsman going through years of apprenticeship in order to be world class at something. Now we want to just snap our fingers and instantaneously be able to do this because we carry this magic wand around in our hand that if we push a button, stuff shows up on our porch. I mean, it's magic. And anything we want, you can get anything you want on this thing very, very quickly. You can't even have a good argument because you can get the answer to the problem at there. And you know, we used to sit around and have fights at dinner and our family and argue about whether somebody was right or not. Now somebody goes and looks on the internet and finds the answer. And well, George is just wrong. Henry's right. You know, and it's just, so this attention span thing is a problem. And really what that is underneath, without shaming someone or trying to shame a whole generation, I'm not doing that, because there's people within each generation that don't do this or that break free from it, it's emotional maturity. The ability to delay pleasure is a sign of maturity. That's what grown-ups do. Children do what feels good. YOLO. You only live once. Quick. Instead of like, I'm going to sacrifice to get a greater outcome. I'm going to live like no one else so that later I can live and give like no one else. I've got to have the moment at this moment. That is a childish expression of any area of your life. It will destroy your marriage. It will raise horrible children. It'll mess up your career, and it certainly will mess up your money. Short-term thinking. The get rich quick has never worked at any time in the world as an ongoing, provable, sustainable process. It's always, and that's where the tortoise and the hare Aesop's fable comes from, right? And so we got to stick with this idea, and that even includes our generosity. We were starting to talk about generosity, and the generosity with these folks, with these millionaires that we studied, is a steady thing, like their savings is a steady thing. They're not trying to have this one big event that says, look at me, how generous I am. Instead, they're fairly quiet about it, almost absurdly quiet and anonymous about it, and they steadily give in to something that they believe in. If they're a Christian, they're going and giving a tithe at their local church. If they're Jewish, they might also be tithing at their synagogue. Regardless of your faith background, there's not a religious background on the planet that does not have a steady giving rhythm as a part of its teaching. Every one of them do, because it's how you build character. And when you're giving, it's almost impossible to not become grateful. And as you become grateful, the next thing that happens is you become more and more content. And the more content you are in a totally discontented culture, the great advantage you have to build wealth.
How emotionally and mentally prepared do we have to be to even be wealthy? Because we talked about the discipline and the postponing of pleasure before we get there. But then even when you get there, to stay there requires a different level of mental and emotional maturity. Talk to us a bit about that, because I think that's often undervalued.
It's a different level of nobility. Not in an aristocracy sense or a looking down on the little people sense. That's not what I'm saying at all. But this idea, what happens is the people that do this, they grow into, they may be in the acquisition mode early and as it goes along, but as the weight of the responsibility of the wealth starts to grow on them over time, it seldom happens quickly, then it flips from acquisition to serving. And they see their wealth as an opportunity to serve. Your spouse, I can get her a nice car. I can serve my children. They can go to college and we can pay for it. I can serve my community and we can open a homeless shelter or fund a homeless shelter. I can serve the world at large. And the more you start to realize then, the more money you're managing, the more people you can help. Because at a certain point, that you can't ingest enough stuff. You know, if you eat when I was a kid growing up, I never had lobster. That was Red Lobster came to town. It was a big deal, right? And if I got lobster with that drawn butter, oh, my mouth's watering right now. If I got lobster with that drawn butter, I thought that was rich people food. And so, I thought rich people ate lobster all the time. And so once I had some money, I finally figured out if you eat enough lobster, it tastes like soap. You can't get enough cars to be okay. Winning does not heal you. Becoming wealthy does not heal you. It makes you more of what you already are. And if you gain wealth gradually and build the character as you're doing it, it will flip at some point and you will become a noble servant of your family, change your family tree, of your community. And that's really all money is good for after a certain point. Again, you can have some nice things, and I'm not against having nice things. But your nice things will have you eventually. They'll eat you alive if that's where you think happiness is, because it's not.
Wow, winning does not heal you. That's definitely a powerful, powerful message for, each and every one of us to hear, especially because I think society, as you said earlier, has actually programmed that feeling, is that if you win, you won't even, well, actually, we've been made to believe if you win, you don't even need healing.
We end up seeing these folks that are in the celebrity, in the spotlight, whether it's sports figures or Hollywood figures or whatever, and they become massively successful within their craft and financially successful too, but they prove out the concept of what we just said. Their lives are a mess many times. And they didn't get what they hoped to get from all of it. They didn't get healing. They didn't get happiness. They didn't get wholeness. They didn't get contentment. Quite the opposite. Because what money does is it's a magnifier. It makes you more of what you are. And so to the extent you are whole, it's going to make you noble and serving. And to the extent that you are greedy, you're going to be unbelievably greedy. To the extent you have a temper problem, you're going to be a rageaholic. You're going to be more, if you're crazy, you're going to get crazier. Whatever it is, it makes you more, it magnifies whatever you are. And so it's a powerful weapon. It's a powerful tool to be used, but it is very dangerous because it's a magnifier. We
end every On Purpose episode with the final 5. These questions have to be answered in 1 word or 1 sentence maximum. So they're a quick fire round. Dave Ramsey, these are your final 5. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, awesome. So the first question is, what is the best financial advice you've ever heard, received, or given?
Be intentional.
Second question, what is the worst financial advice you've ever received or heard?
You can borrow your way into wealth.
Great answer. Very aligned. All right, question number 3. What do you believe is the best investment or spending that you've ever done in your life?
Giving.
Beautiful. Question number 4, what do you think was your biggest financial mistake of an investment or expenditure?
Going deeply in debt to build wealth.
And 5th and final question, if you could make 1 law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
I would require them to be generous.
That's beautiful. Dave Ramsey, everyone.